Dear respected Thai, dear sisters, brothers, and Sangha, we are in the middle of autumn, and when we look around, leaves are turning colors, and trees are stripped and bare. And this is a season that, for me, it feels like I am a tree myself, and that my leaves are shedding off and falling also. It's a time for me to really go back to my roots and my core. It's a time when I cut off all distractions in my mind and also from outside, so that I can come back to my core, come back to my root. And it's a wonderful time to reflect on impermanence. It is all around us, the signs of impermanence. It's a wonderful opportunity to practice letting go, like the leaves are letting go, the trees are letting go of the leaves. And so it's a time to really go inside ourselves. I don't know if that's the case for you, but every autumn, it feels like that for me. And every autumn, it feels like I'm dying somewhat inside. Because I have to shed off all these leaves. It feels like part of me is dying. It's dying slowly. And going back to ourselves, the things that we need to really reconcile with, and the things that we really need to understand in ourselves. And this is the time when the practice is so much needed. The very simple, basic practices, the practices of breathing, the practices of being aware of our steps, the practices of feeling and touching our body are so needed for us to stay afloat. Otherwise, the tendency to go in depression can easily happen. I think this is a time when a lot of us experience some degree of depression, especially those of us who, out there in the world, when people don't really have a practice and a direction in their life. And so it's a reminder for us that taking up the practice wholeheartedly, it's really a privilege. It's really a necessity for our well-being. And not just, everyone is doing it, I have to do it, or my sisters, always reminded me to do it, that's why I do it. It's really for our well-being. And also for deepening understanding of who we are. And one of those things that we have to confront with is our fears. We have a lot of fears. Fear of all sorts. Big fear, small fear. Fear of nature. Fear of being alone. Fear of being fear of doing things that may challenge our ideas of who we are, our self-image. That's a big one for many of us. We have a self-image of who we are. And living in a community like this really challenged that self-image we have. And so our resistance really comes from that space of, that place of fear. And how do we deal with that? This is a time of the year that I'm reminded that whatever I'm dealing with whatever difficulties that I'm confronting, whatever difficulties I have in relationship, it's really time for me to go back to my root. And it's time for me to go back to my core and really have clarity into myself. So the first step that we need to do when confronting fear is to really sit with fear. And that can be really difficult. The way out is really the way in, and to feel it and to experience it. To feel the constrictedness of the heart with this fear. And also the constrictedness in our body as we experience this fear. Without like ideas and associations we may have, or expectations of ourselves, but just simply sit with fear as it is. Because lots of our fear are coming from our ideas, self-image of who we are, and also ideas and experiences we had with things that we experienced as in our childhood, in the past. So it's important to really sit with our fear, familiarize our fear, befriend with our fear. One of those fears that we have is the fear of death. And this fear is so innate in every one of us. And I suppose it is much more in people who are, getting their heaven partner who have just passed away. That fear can be really enormous. And just accepting the fear is already transforming it halfway. And in our daily life, it's important to reflect on and confront our fears. The 5 contemplations that we have, we could use, in our meditation, in our contemplation is one of those. The first one is, I'm of the nature to grow old. I cannot escape old age. I'm the nature to get sick. I cannot escape sickness. I'm the nature to grow, to die. I cannot escape death. All that I love and are very dear to me, one day I have to be separated from them. And that my only belongings that I will take with me in whichever direction and form I manifest are my actions of body, speech, and mind. And this contemplation helps us to face the fear, because the fear of nature is really coming from the fear of death and dying. And that we have to practice to confront these fears. Because, like I said, they may be just our ideas. The fear may be just our ideas. When we contemplate on that this body, its nature is to grow old. Its nature is to be sick. Its nature is to die. We face its vulnerability and its fragility. And but also to face its wonders as well, that it's wonderful to have a body, and that even if it's vulnerable and fragile, and that even though its nature is to grow old and to eventually die, that it's a wonderful thing to have a body, to be alive here and now, and that we have to take good care of our body and to live deeply in the present moment so that we can really not just take care of our body, but also to reconcile and face and work with this fear of growing old, of dying, of getting sick. And the more we are looking in our body in that way, through these contemplations, we realize that it's so necessary. It's so necessary to grow old. I mean, I won't want to go back to my teenage years or my early 20s. I'm happy where I am right now. Because as I grow old, I think I'm a bit wiser. I have more experience in life so that I can live my life with love, with care, so that I can love other people. And that being sick, I feel it's a way for my body to strengthen itself. And for me to be in the skin of other people, because if I'd never been sick, I wouldn't know what it's like to be sick. I would never have enough compassion for those who are sick around me. I can never have sympathy for them. So being sick is also an opportunity. Being sick in the community gives me an opportunity to rest. It gives me permission not to go to activities that I can sleep in. So whenever I'm sick, I think it's a good sign. It's a good opportunity. I can rest. And that I allow myself to rest. And that I need the rest to renew myself, to renew my body. And I'm of the nature to die. I have always practiced in dying. I have been practicing it for a long time as a way to prepare for my mom's death, as a way to prepare for Thai's death. And one of those ways that I practice is that every time I go to sleep, I see this may be my last time that I may not wake up in the morning. And I smile with that. And that whenever I have too much thinking, or I have ideas and perceptions in my head, or fears in my head, I practice to allow them to die with the cells that are dying in my body, because cells are dying and being born all the time, and allow them to die with these cells in my body, so that I don't have to be too preoccupied with all these things. That eventually, when I'm dying, these things are no longer important, right? So I allow them to die, so that I can have more clarity in my mind and can allow my head to rest. And so, and I feel I can never prepare enough when it comes to their own death. My mom's death, I knew it was so necessary. It was so necessary for her to die. But still, it was a bit difficult to really it was a bit difficult to have to deal with that loss. And I imagine if I didn't practice, that would be like so much more difficult. So we can never really prepare enough. And these are contemplations that we have to really reflect on and contemplate on every day in our sitting. When we take a walk in nature, among the leaves that are turning color and are falling. And it is only when we are able to accept our own death, it's only when we are able to accept that we are of the nature to grow old and to get sick, that we can overcome fears that are, the other fears that are not so as significant as the fear of death, such as the fear of nature, the fear of ghosts. We've been talking about ghosts a lot among the sisters lately, and it's one of those fears that I had since a child, watching horror movies. And now, when I'm alone in the dark, these things would come up too, like this fear. And when I was able to accept my own death, what's there to fear about ghosts or the dark? Because those fears are really based on the fear of death. I'm talking about death because this is the time when I feel like I said, I'm dying inside. I am stripping off my own leaves, ideas that I have. Expectations that I have of myself and other people. My fears. These are the things that we have to allow them to die with as this season comes, the season of stripping off all the leaves, shedding off leaves, to go back to our root, to go back to our core. And all that are dear to me, eventually I have to say goodbye. And this is a hard one. And this awareness is really important because it helps us to treasure the presence of our beloved ones and treasures all the good conditions that we have. Sometimes we take it for granted, all these conditions that we have here and now. My young sister and I have just returned from China, and one of those things that I learned on this trip, realized on this trip, is that how fortunate we are. We are extremely fortunate because we have a really beautiful and safe community. We're protected by the community. We have a really safe environment. We have clean air to breathe. It's quite polluted over there, everywhere. It's like you don't see the sun. The sun comes out like a moon because of all this like smog in the air everywhere. Only when you go up to the high mountains that you can actually see blue sky. You don't see blue sky anywhere. So we're so fortunate. But another thing that we are so fortunate is that we have concrete practices, we have tools, we have practices that are clear and concrete and that we can actually use them to work with our fear, our anger, our frustration. We have tools to deal with whatever is unfolding in ourselves and also whatever is unfolding from outside. Because many of these people that we have came in contact with do not have any tools. A lot of these people can't even feel their body because they don't really have the tool to come back to feel their body, to feel their mind. And a lot of us are in this environment and we really take it for granted. And so this contemplation helps us to treasure, all the wonderful conditions, all the good conditions that we have, to help us to practice, to help us to manage our suffering, to help us to cultivate joy and love. And we're fortunate because we have a path, we have a Sangha to support that path. Not just the outer path, we're supported and guided by the Sangha, but we have the inner path where we have the tools to cultivate and the light of mindfulness to lead us in our inner path. So I'm the owner of my actions of body, speech, and mind. Because whatever I say, whatever I think, whatever I do, remains there in the depths of my consciousness. And that's the motivation, that's the energy that pushes me and motivate me and manipulate me to think, to see, to relate to the world, to other people in certain ways, whether it's the way of suffering or the way of love or joy. And it helps us to be more responsible as practitioners, that we need to really take up the path, the practice ourselves. We can't just stay afloat. We need to swim. We can't just stay afloat on the river. We need to flow with the river. When we just stay afloat, the current carries us in whatever direction it wants. But when we swim, we have a choice in which direction we want to head to. And so together as a community, we're swimming. We're swimming together. And once one of us stops swimming, we sink. That person sink in the water or get carried away by the current. And so we need to continue swimming together. And so it's only when we are able to reconcile with our fear, it's only when we are able to reconcile with death, that we can really be there for other people. Can be there and feel the pain and the suffering and the fear of our parent, of people who are having big loss. Because if we can't deal with these things in ourselves, we wouldn't be able to be there to support the people we love. We wouldn't be able to support those who really needed us after a loss of a partner or something like that. So it's really important to be able to stay above the water in order to be able to help other people. If we are in the water like them, we wouldn't be able to help them. And there's no one way to help people. It's only when you're there and you're above water and you have the clarity that you know what you need to say and what you need to do in order to support the other person the best way that we could. And just as teaching children, there are many of our brothers and sisters here who have much more experiences in teaching children than I do. But one of the things that I realize is that you can't really force the practice on other people. You can only demonstrate the practice through the way you live and practice. And people can really see it, that you have genuine practice or not. They can really see it. And they can see it through your openness, your kindness, your love, your patience, your capacity to listen deeply to them. And I'm thinking about what the Buddha says. That we create the world with our mind. In other words, we're messy inside. So that's why whatever we see outside becomes quite messy. We have a lot of suffering outside and inside, and we look at the world through these glasses. We're wearing these tinted glasses all the time, whether we are actually having glass or not. And it's hard to put that down. It's hard to put down these glasses. And we project out there what we see in here, what we are in here, our perceptions of the world, our perception. We see the world through our perceptions. we have this perception in ourselves, and for us, the reality, and we projected that outside us. And perceptions are just constructions of the mind. The mind creates these ideas based on our conditioning, based on our life experiences, based on our upbringing, education, and whatnot. And as practitioners, we go back to ourselves to look into our perception. Look into our perceptions about ourselves. Look into our perceptions about the world. And one of those things that I realize, the main cause of my suffering are really my own perceptions about myself and about other people and about the world. In other words, ideas that I have about myself is my main cause of my own suffering. And the ideas about how others should be in relation to myself, in relation to me, is another cause of my big suffering. And a cause for a lot of our suffering. And this is a time when we're reminded to practice letting go. We practice letting go so that we can have clarity. But how do we let go? This is something that I always reflect on since, I came into the practice, because I heard it all the time. But how can I actually practice letting go? I used to confuse it with denying it. I used to confuse letting go with like avoidance, like not wanting to face it. It's not suppression either. Letting go, it's about recognizing what's there. It's about face it head on. Recognizing what's there. And surrendering our ideas and perceptions and expectations regarding it. It's an opportunity for us to look to see what kind of ideas and perceptions do I have about these issues, about that made it really difficult for me to let go. And just to surrender these ideas and perceptions we have. And just allowing it to be as it is. Because there's a tendency in us to want to control, to want to change, to want to manipulate it in ways that feels right for us. And that's where frictions and conflicts come about. And just allowing it, maybe step back a bit. Step back and allow things to unfold as it is. And first of all, it gives us so much space if we are able to step back. Not just, in our mind, being able to step back can offer us so much space. And it's the space and clarity that help us to really see deeply into the root of it, into the root of that issues. And so, instead of jumping in to try to control and change the situation, according to our perception, just allow it to be. Or allowing ourselves to really feel what's there inside without preconceived ideas, without trying to change. It's bringing awareness to what's there and just stay with that bare experience of what's there in ourselves. So, working with anger, we can stay with that bare experience of this energy flaring up inside ourselves. Not talking, not speaking, can really help us to go in and not allow it to flare up. The anger to flare up, but to stay with that experience. Taking a walk would be really helpful. Coming in touch with nature and the wonders around us would be really helpful. Stepping out, stepping away, so that we can really have the space and the time to really stay with that energy that's wanting to flare up, the energy that wants to explode inside, and stay in that, in the midst of that energy. It's as if we have a volcano in here that wanted to explode. Try to see if we can stay in the heart of that volcano and just really feel the discomfort and the pain and the tightness that's brought about by this anger inside ourselves. The breathing really helps. Breathing really helps us to stay in our body instead of our head. It's only when we stay in our head, when we are in the midst of all these emotions, that we can be overwhelmed by it. It's only when we can stay with our breath, that we can be in the body and not in our head. And cultivate appropriate attention. In other words, instead of thinking of situations that would water our anger even more, think about something that could help us to deal with our anger, that could help us to embrace the anger. And one of those things that we can think about is love. That we can offer a loving meditation to ourselves. Maybe we can start with ourselves. May I be safe, protected. May I be peaceful and happy. May I be well, healthy in my body and mind. May I be free from wrong view and wrong perception. And may I have clarity into my habit energies and my suffering. And our anger could be just, our way of reacting could be just coming from a habit energy of reacting that we have cultivated over many, many lifetimes. Our ancestral, our parents have probably passed on to us this seed of anger. And that we have been, this seed in us have been watered in our childhood, in our upbringing. And so, to cultivate compassion for ourselves, to know that we're not alone with this anger, that we're not all responsible for this anger, or we're not all responsible for the suffering that we have. That we are merely the recipient of the suffering. And it gives us compassion for ourselves. And that we can't help it. We can't really help it, really. But to cultivate compassion for ourselves and love for ourselves. And so when we are able to tap in compassion for ourselves, we can offer compassion to other people for their suffering, for their ways that had created suffering for ourselves. And even if people that we don't, that it's a bit difficult to see that they're suffering, doesn't mean that they don't suffer. Just the fact that they are creating for suffering for other people, it's already a sign that they're suffering. Because when someone is happy, when someone is peaceful, they wouldn't do things that create suffering for other people. They don't have a path in their life. Their path is about money, power. And someone without a path for their life is someone who deserves love and compassion, because without a path, they're lost. They're lost. They don't know what it is that they want to do with their life. And they go into these directions that create suffering for themselves and for other people. So at least these contemplations help me to feel more at peace in myself. This contemplation helps me to deal with my anger and my frustration. These contemplations water the seeds of love in me. They water the seeds of compassion in me. I can only be happy. I can only be truly happy when I have love inside. And love comes from this understanding of why I am the way I am, of who I am the way I am, of why people are like that. And so habit energies are just automatic behaviors, like we behave automatically. And without awareness, it's as if we're like a machine that every time this button is pushed, that we react in a certain way. First time it's like that. Second time it's like that. The 10th time it's like that. That every time it's pushed, we act the same way. And so, practicing to recognize our habit energies, practicing mindfulness, coming back to ourselves, looking in, open the inner eyes so that we can really see habit energies that are unfolding in our body and in our mind. And sometimes we could only recognize it after the fact, after it's already, manifested and caused harm or hurt to ourselves and other people. But the more we are able to recognize it, the weaker it becomes. The stronger our mindfulness is, so that we can recognize it as soon as it comes up. You can just really feel it coming up, the habit energy of wanting to say or to speak or to act in a certain way. You can actually see it. It's about watering seeds. And the whole practice is all about watering seeds. From the moment we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep, it's all about watering seeds. The seeds of mindfulness, the seeds of awareness. It's as if we are bringing a light, lighten up this light inside our heart and our mind, so that it can really recognize what is there happening in my body and what is happening in my mind. And also watering the seeds of love, watering the seeds of joy, watering the seeds of peace. We're very fortunate here because this environment is very conducive to water wholesome seeds. This environment, we're reminded all the time to water the wholesome seeds and not the other seeds. And when people relate to us, they relate in ways that mostly help to water the wholesome seeds and not the other seeds. Of course, inadvertently, sometimes we water the other seeds in ourselves, in other people. But most of the time, it's an environment where our wholesome seeds are watered every day, so that the wholesome seeds are big enough to balance with the negative seeds, the unwholesome seeds, so that eventually the wholesome seed is heavy enough and big enough so that these unwholesome seeds become smaller and smaller, so that it's so light to the point where it's there, but it doesn't affect us. It becomes really insignificant part of us. And so through the practice of breathing, through the practice of walking, there sounds so, it's so redundant to say it again and again, right? Because it's as if you heard it all the time. You heard it every Dharma talk about breathing and walking. And but these practices are so important for us to create space and clarity inside ourselves, so that we can see in the depths of our being, so that we can have the clarity and the inner strength to face our fears, to work with death, to confront death. Maybe we listen to one sound of the bell before we continue. So let's open our inner eyes to feel and to see. So going back to the season, going back to autumn, we're in autumn, and it really helps us to see how we are so connected with nature, with the seasons, because we can really feel autumn inside ourselves. We can really feel this wanting to close up, cut off, in order to go back to ourselves, to feel what's there, like we are shedding off leaves to go back to our roots. And it's a really wonderful way to practice, to come in touch with impermanence. We know what impermanence is. maybe up here, but to really feel it in our heart takes time and practice to get it down to the heart level. And this season is a wonderful invitation for us to do that, to really take these ideas that we have, and take it down. In other words, it's a wonderful opportunity just to really feel impermanence in every part of our body, and to feel impermanence everywhere around us. The changing of season, the changing in the body and also in the mind. And this is a way for us to really work with our attachments. It helps us to see what kind of attachment we have. We are attached. I'm attached because I want to keep that person in my life all the time. I don't want any changes. I went through a phase where I didn't want any change in the community. I just wanted to stay the way it is, because I liked it like that and I want it like that. And in relationship as well, I don't want any elements that come in to change that relationship. My relationship with other people, my relationship with my teacher. And it had created enormous suffering for me. And so I had to re-examine my ideas about how things should stay as it is all the time. That I had to re-examine my ideas about permanence and impermanence. And when we are really bringing impermanence into our heart, from the head level down, and knowing that things need to change, that growth comes from changes, even in relationship. It really helps us to allow things to change. It really helps us to let go a bit of our clinging, so that things can grow, so that things can change. Things are of the nature to grow and to change. It's our expectations and our ideas of them that we wanted to stay the same that created this attachment and this clinging, and that created the suffering. And so, one element of true love, it's really upekkha, equanimity, letting go of our ideas about letting go of ideas that things should stay the same as it is. Our relationship with other people should stay the same as it is. That our love or the other person's love for us should always stay as it is. And so this is a time that we can really experience impermanence, and that we can really practice letting go of these ideas that we have about ourselves and about how things should always stay as it is. So autumn is a wonderful opportunity, really. And it's a time to practice dying, like I have said at the beginning. and time for us to come back to our root, come back to ourselves. And we have all the support there are, all support we need here and now in the community with the practice. And not just the community here and now, but also we have the community in the back, in our back. We have like lineage of teachers and ancestral teachers and great beings like bodhisattvas who are always there to support us. We only need to tap into their energy, to feel their presence and to feel their support. Many of us, maybe some of you who are coming for the first time, but many of us have learned about our ancestral teachers and the different bodhisattvas, qualities of different bodhisattvas, and we can really tap into their energy so that we can be nourished by their strength and their wisdom and their love. And that if we can really tap into them, we can feel that they're always there to support us. Every time I come up here, I invite the ancestral teachers and the bodhisattvas to speak. I feel like they're like speaking from down here, from the depths of my being. They're there, and they're speaking. And I always feel their presence. And so that we're not alone, and that there's nothing to be proud of. One of those things that I see is that I'm just merely a continuation, an instrument, and that there's really nothing significant about me. It's the ancestral teachers that have given me the strength and the support. And today we have it's a memorial day for our ancestral teacher, Sư Tổ Nhất Định. We're very fortunate to have ancestral teacher Nhất Định. The concentration on oneness is his name. We're very fortunate because our ancestral teacher, who is the founder of the root temple where Thai had ordained as a novice, our ancestral teacher had been a very diligent practitioner, very well learned and well loved by everyone, by the king, by the court officials, by everyone. He was invited to be, he was the abbot of an important temple, Bao Quốc, but also was invited to become the abbot of the national temple. But after some time, he renounced all those and resigned his position and went up the mountain to practice in a little hut by himself with 2 disciples. And he brought his mother. He brought his mother to this little hut so that he can take care of his mother. His mother was 80 years old. And they live together on this mountain. They grow vegetable, so that they can survive on. They didn't want any donation, nothing from, all these people that wanted to donate, make temples and stuff, like build temples for them. They were just really happy with a simple hut. It's And I realized that we're a continuation of our ancestral teacher, because almost every monastic have this deep desire in them, wanting to go up to this mountain, just surrounded by forests and trees and nature, and just plant vegetables and just live on them, and no distractions from the world, no internet, no cell phone, and just live day in, day out in peace and in nature. Every one of us have that needs inside. I have that big need in here to go to a hut on a mountain, just like our ancestral teacher. And his love for his mother was just really moving. He was a high monk, well-known monk, and yet he wasn't enamored by other power, position, fame. He just wanted to live a simple life, and just to care for his mother. And so one day his mother got sick, and the doctor said that she needed to have some fish, fish soup. So he went down to the market and begged for a fish. He went home with like a fish in his hand, and everyone was like looking at it and thought, why in the world a monk is eating fish? But he didn't care. He knew what he was doing. And so it was an example of love, a beautiful example that even if we are monastics, we're no longer living in the world with our family, but we're so much a part of our family, we're so much a part of our parents, and that it's our responsibility with the practice to help and support our family. And if we have like difficulties with our mother or our father or anyone in our family, that we have to practice to reconcile with them, so that at the end of the day, love is what's most important. Acceptance is what's most important. So today we will remember our ancestral teacher, and we will offer incense and food to our ancestral teacher to remember, and also to learn from his examples of a simple living, simple life, of love and care for the people around us, for our beloved ones. So thank you so much for your listening. And we will end here. When my sister invited me to come up and give a Dharma talk, she said, "Oh, only for the Sangha in the new hamlet. It's not a mindfulness day. Everyone will have their own days at home, and that would just be our lay friends here in the new hamlet and the sisters." So only just 2 days ago that I realized that everyone is here. And I realized that there's this ancestral day today. So it's a beautiful day today with the sunshine. We offered a special gift with the sunshine to enjoy autumn, to enjoy one another, and also to enjoy coming in touch with our ancestral teachers, with our ancestral teacher Sư Tổ Nhất Định. And so thank you. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your attention. And thank you for being here today, especially our friends and brothers and sisters from the other hamlet. You didn't have to come, but you wanted to come. Thank you for your support. So we'll listen to the sounds of the bell to open our inner eyes again, to really feel and see what's there, and simply to smile, and allow the sound of the bell to penetrate deeply into our body, into our mind.